Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Al24 Midnight Bulletin. I'm your host, Miriam Zian, and here are your top stories. Over the last 24 hours, 118 Palestinians were killed in the Israeli occupation in 11 massacres. Coming up, the global community expresses strong disapproval of the United States veto of an Algerian proposal in the UN Security Council seeking a ceasefire in Gaza, and Arab nations condemn the ongoing American backing of the Israeli military's lethal actions. In Damascus, Syria, a residential building was targeted in an aggression by Israeli forces, resulting in the deaths of 2 civilians. Also, a mother and her daughter perished in a strike by Israeli forces in southern Lebanon. And Hezbollah announces the targeting of occupation army positions in the north of the occupied territories. Hello and welcome again to the program. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said the occupation committed 11 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip during the past 24 hours, claiming the lives of 118 Palestinians and injuring 163 others. The ministry added that the toll of the Zionist aggression had risen to 29,313 victims and more than 69,000 injuries since the 7th of last October. Palestinian media reports said that about 9 people, including 3 children, were killed as a result of an occupation bombing targeting the Mawasi Khan Yunis area in the Gaza Strip. Medical sources said that at least 8 Palestinian patients were killed after the electrical generator stopped operating, which caused oxygen to run out at the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis.
Has to be moved with an ambulance.
The World Health Organization said that the staff of the UN body was shocked of what it has seen inside Al Nasser Hospital in Gaza. WHO spokesperson added that an estimated 130 sick and injured patients and at least 15 health workers remained inside the hospital. The Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, the largest in Gaza, has ceased to function following the occupation's military raid on February 14th after a week-long siege.
We were shocked what we actually saw in Nasser Medical Complex. There's waste everywhere. Electricity was not working. Parts of the hospital are damaged and some severely damaged.
United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Martin Griffiths said that 500,000 people in Gaza are on the brink of famine as they lack the most basic needs of food, water, and healthcare. Griffiths described what happened in Gaza during the past 137 days as unprecedented in severity, brutality, and scope. He added that the UN has asked the occupying power in Gaza to facilitate the arrival of aid to no avail, revealing that the occupation has wiped out entire neighborhoods in the Gaza Strip.
These people do not have access to the simplest basic needs of food, water, and medical care. The deprivation that the residents of Gaza are dealing with is hard and deep, and the aid, no matter how much, will not meet their needs.
According to documents shared by the United Nations, occupation forces fired on a UN convoy carrying vital food supplies in central Gaza on February 5, before ultimately blocking the trucks from progressing to the northern part of the territory. According to an internal incident report compiled by UNRWA, the main UN relief agency in Gaza said a truck, which was one of 10 in a convoy sitting stationary at an occupation holding point when it was fired upon. The Palestinian Hamas resistance movement said that the World Food Programme's suspension of food aid delivery to the northern Gaza Strip is a dangerous development that will double the humanitarian suffering of the Palestinians in Gaza and northern governors as well. Hamas called in a statement on the World Food Programme and all UN agencies, including UNRWA, to put pressure on the occupation by announcing a resumption of their activities in the northern Gaza Strip in compliance with their legal and humanitarian responsibilities. A number of countries have expressed disappointment after the US vetoed a UN Security Council draft resolution by Algeria, which called for a temporary ceasefire in the besieged enclave. Tuesday's vote marks the third time the US has vetoed a call for a ceasefire and comes despite successive international calls and warnings against the continuation of the genocide in Gaza. Nabil Khazini.
Russia called it another black page in the history of the UN Security Council, while China expressed its strong disappointment. These are some of many international reactions echoing from the inside and from the outside of the Security Council, in which many countries have criticized the United States after it vetoed the draft resolution put forth by Algeria, calling for a temporary ceasefire in the besieged Gaza Strip.
Today, we have borne witness to yet another dark chapter in the history of the United Nations Security Council. This was yet again written by the United States delegation, the U.S. delegation, which continues to pursue the same objective, to provide cover for its closest Middle East ally and to drag out the time to the greatest possible extent for them to be able to carry out their inhumane plans against Gaza, specifically to expel the Palestinians from the Strip and to completely cleanse the Strip, essentially and quite literally transforming it into an uninhabitable territory.
China expresses its strong disappointment by and dissatisfaction with the outcome of the vote just taken. We have voted in favor of the draft resolution.
The failure of the Security Council to pass the Algerian draft resolution comes despite various countries, organizations, and international human rights and humanitarian bodies sounding the alarm as the death toll of the ongoing occupation aggression against the Gaza Strip is approaching 30,000. The US move came despite the support of 13 other members of the Security Council, with one abstention from the UK. However, this is not the end of the fight for a ceasefire in Gaza.
We will continue meeting as an Arab group and other friends, and we will discuss all these options, and we will decide on the step that we will begin with, but we will not relent until we succeed in having a ceasefire.
Tuesday's vote marks the third time the United States has vetoed a call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Washington previously vetoed an amendment proposed by Russia, calling for a ceasefire in December, and an earlier resolution in October calling for a humanitarian process.
The United States of America has once again imposed its veto to object an Algerian draft resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, thus increasing the number of times it has used its veto in favor of the entity to 46 times since 1973. Mohammed Khatil has the report.
During a recent session of the UN Security Council, Washington used its veto against an Algerian draft resolution calling for an end to be put to the barbaric aggression against the defenseless Palestinians in Gaza, showing once again its unconditional support for the Zionist entity that perpetrates indiscriminate killings in the Palestinian-occupied territories. Out of the 89 times Washington used its veto, more than half were in favor of the Zionist occupation, the most recent of which were 3 resolutions related to the ongoing aggression against the Gaza Strip. The United States of America has a long history of defending the Zionist entity at the Security Council, despite the heinous crimes and serious violations of international law. In late 2017, the U.S. veto undermined a draft resolution condemning Washington's recognition of Al-Quds as the capital of the entity. 3 years before that, Washington used another veto against a Palestinian draft resolution to end the occupation. In 2004, the U.S. blessed the assassination by the Zionist occupation of the leader and founder of the Hamas movement, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, by vetoing a draft resolution condemning the crime. In the summer of 2003, the U.S. veto also prevented the UN Security Council from adopting a resolution calling for the protection of late Palestinian President Yasser Arafat. The historical support by the United States of America for the Zionist occupation was also documented in 1987 when it vetoed a UN resolution denouncing the Zionist iron fist policy against the children of the First Intifada. The US turned, once again, a blind eye and a deaf ear to the massacres of Sabra and Shatila camps as it imposed its veto on a resolution denouncing the massacres that shocked the entire humanity. The 138 days of the Zionist war of annihilation, during which the occupation has perpetrated the most horrific forms of killings and destruction, were not enough to bring Washington to reconsider its position and vote in favor of a humanitarian ceasefire that would alleviate the sufferings of the innocent Palestinians.
The Palestinian presidency expressed today strong condemnation of the United States vetoing of the Algerian-led draft resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The presidency, in a statement, expressed its surprise at the continued American refusal to stop the genocidal war waged by the occupation against the Palestinian people. The presidency affirmed that the American veto, which defies the will of the international community, will give an additional green light to the Israeli occupation state to continue its aggression against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and to carry out its bloody attack on Rafah. The Islamic resistance movement Hamas strongly denounced the use of the U.S. President Joe Biden's administration's veto power against the Security Council draft resolution from Algeria. In a statement, Hamas confirmed that it considers the failure of the resolution to be an obstruction of the international will in service of the occupation's agenda aimed at killing and displacing the Palestinian people, stressing that the step is also a green light for the occupation to commit more massacres and kill the defenseless Palestinian people through bombing and starvation. The International Court of Justice is continuing its public hearings on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of the Israeli occupation in the occupied Palestinian territory. The Cuban representative said in her briefing before the court that her country's delegation came to the court based on Cuba's conviction to peace and historical solidarity with all peoples who suffered colonialism, adding that the Palestinian people are still exposed to illegal occupation by Israel. For his part, the representative of Colombia stressed that long-standing occupation of the Palestinian territories is a violation of international and customary law, calling for its end. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki condemned the position of the United States before the International Court of Justice regarding the violations of the Zionist occupation in the Gaza Strip, describing it as weak, stressing that the United States is using its veto in the Security Council to obstruct any efforts to stop the war. Let's take a listen.
You know, I expected much more. I didn't hear anything new. They repeated their written statement again. You know, they focused on the political dimension rather than the legal one, and this is not the case here. But anyway, you know, they even quoted Secretary Blinken more than twice, which really reflects, you know, that where they stand is not that strong.
Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesman Majid Al-Ansari said that Doha had received confirmations from the Hamas Islamic Resistance Movement regarding the receipt of shipment of medicines based on a Qatari brokered agreement, and that it had begun delivering them to detainees in the Gaza Strip. Al-Ansari added in a press statement that Qatar received these assurances as a mediator in the agreement, which includes the entry of medicines and shipment of humanitarian aid to civilians in the Gaza Strip, especially in the most affected, and damaged areas in exchange for delivering the medicines needed by detainees in the Gaza Strip, stressing that Qatari mediation in various files with regional and international partners is continuing. A Palestinian child died on Wednesday of his wounds sustained after he was shot by the Zionist occupation forces in the town of Azun, east of Qalqilia. The Palestinian Ministry of Health announced that 14-year-old child called Fadi Saad Suleiman was hit in the heart by live occupation bullets, describing his injury as critical before announcing his death a few hours later. According to local sources, the occupation forces also arrested 4 citizens after storming the town and setting up military checkpoints at the western entrance to Azun and the entrance to the village of Hadra, east of Qalqilia. They detained citizens, vehicles, and hampered their movement from neighboring villages and towns. At least 2 have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Damascus, Syria's capital, according to Sana news agency. The attack, which also caused material damage, took place in Kafr Susa district, an area that is home to a number of security and military headquarters. A woman and a child were killed on Wednesday in an Israeli airstrike in Majd al-Zoun in South Lebanon. Several other people were injured and taken to the hospital. The deaths add to the toll from more than 4 months of violence that has played out in parallel to the Gaza war. The Lebanese Hezbollah declared on Wednesday that it has struck sites held by Zionist forces in a number of settlements located in the northern region of the occupied Palestinian territory. In a statement, Hezbollah claimed that it had hit 2 Israeli military installations, one in the Shumira colony and the other in the Ibn Mensham colony directly. It also claimed that it had hit 2 buildings that housed Zionist soldiers in the Avivim colony. The Algerian Minister of Health, Abdelhak Saihi, received the Minister of Public Health of the Sahrawi Republic, Sadek Baba Hasna, in the presence of executives from the central administration, where the 2 parties discussed prospects for cooperation. The Algerian Minister of Health expressed his full readiness to provide support and assistance in various specialties. The 2 parties agreed to form a joint coordination body in the field of health that will follow up on various aspects of cooperation in this field. The stability both nations enjoy, as well as their shared difficulties and positions, contribute to the high degree of momentum that characterizes Algerian-Mauritanian relations. Marwa Bilayawar.
The diplomatic ties between Algeria and Mauritania have witnessed significant progress in recent years. Their political understandings and cooperation in handling security and stability-related matters have reached an unprecedented level. The two nations, which are politically and militarily stable, face similar difficulties and even hold similar values. Their relations have gained more momentum in line with their political strong will. Economic cooperation between Algiers and Nouakchott is not new. It is inspired by the enormous potential that the two countries harbor in many sectors. A significant increase in economic exchanges and joint infrastructure projects have been established between the two neighboring countries. Recently, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune devoted a working meeting to the establishment of a free trade zone and the construction of a crucial road connecting Tindouf to the Mauritanian city of Essaouira. Algeria has also considered the financial side, as evidenced by the opening of the two branches of Algerian banks in Nouakchott and Nouadhibou. The Algerian government decided to support economic operators by financing permanent stands for their products and facilitating participation in continental fairs. The two nations are exploring economic exchanges, which are expected to increase thanks to Algerian businesses engaging in the Mauritanian market and its use of Nouakchott as a transit point to the West African markets. On several occasions, Algeria and Mauritania affirmed their commitment to carrying out initiatives to strengthen and advance bilateral cooperation in order to fulfill the ambitions of the two brotherly peoples.
The ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to Algiers, Abdullah bin Nasser Al Busiri, praised the fraternal relations between Algeria and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, stressing the importance of the common ties between the two countries throughout history. This came in a statement he made on the sidelines of a ceremony held by the Saudi Embassy in Algeria on Wednesday on the occasion of the Saudi Foundation Day.
As we celebrate in sisterly Algeria, we are proud of our relations with Algeria at the leadership level and people's level, and in all fields, thanks God, and we reassure you that Algerian-Saudi relations are historical and strong, and we wish for pride to Algerian and Saudi peoples.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called on Poland's leader and the European Union's officials to come to the Polish-Ukrainian border for talks over repeated blockades by Polish farmers angry at what they say is unfair competition from Kyiv. Polish farmers blocked almost all traffic on the border with Ukraine on Tuesday in an escalation of demonstration.
I want to address the Polish government, Mr. Prime Minister, Tusk and ministers. I have tasked the government to go to the border of our two countries in the nearest future, and before February 24, Ukraine's Prime Minister, the whole government from the logistics to the agricultural sector, and of course Ukraine's Defense Minister, because this blockade at the border unfortunately threatens deliveries to our boys on the front line.
Foreign ministers of the group of 20 nations were gathering Wednesday in Rio de Janeiro to discuss poverty, climate change, and heightened global tensions as Brazil takes on the annual presidency of the bloc. The ministers and other representatives of the 20 leading rich and developing nations plan to spend 2 days setting a roadmap for work and to accomplish ahead of a November 18 and 19 summit in Rio. The 2-day gathering was due to kick off at Rio Marina with an open discussion of the global situation and its conflicts, including the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. That's it for our program tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the Midnight News Bulletin. If you missed any part of our broadcast, you can find us on social media platforms, and have a good night.